Hello everybody, in today's video we're going to be going over Hurricane Isaias and we're going to be giving you an update on the storm. We currently have hurricane warnings for parts of eastern Florida and parts of the Bahamas. This is going to be tracking up the east coast and potentially bringing up to 4 to about 8 inches of rainfall for parts of the northeast here. So we're going to be going over that in today's video. We also have deadly storm surge potential and also some flash flooding for parts of the east coast mainly. And we're going to be going over my personal storm track forecast and intensity forecast at the end of the video. So make sure you are staying tuned all the way until the end. And also, tomorrow I'm not going to be updating you guys on Hurricane Isaias again. I'm going to actually be going over my personal fall foliage forecast. It's going to be a new series I'm doing. I'm going to go over my fall foliage forecast, my frost forecast, and also my snowfall forecast for this winter. So make sure you are staying tuned for that, and I'll be uploading that tomorrow right around noon time. So make sure you do have your notifications turned on for that. So here is your current National Weather Service page. We have heat advisories and excessive heat warnings for parts of the western United States as well as for parts of the Carolinas. We also have some hurricane warnings and tropical storm warnings as well as some hurricane watches up for parts of the eastern part of Florida as well as the Bahamas. And then we have two areas of flood watches. We have one for eastern Michigan as well as one for western Louisiana and easternmost Texas there. So here is your current 5 geographical outlook from the National Hurricane Center, and they do have this little area outlined for a disturbance. They have a 10% chance of developing within the next 48 hours, and then within the next 5 days, they have a 60% chance of this developing. So a decent chance that after Isaias moves by, that we will have some sort of system that kind of moves up and potentially moves up the East Coast for a third time this Atlantic hurricane season. We'll have to see about that. Right now, model guidance is bringing this pretty much out to sea, but we'll have to see. Maybe we could have our next named storm after this. We also have Tropical Depression 10 that's near the Cape Verde Islands right there off the coast of Africa. It's actually very unusual to see a storm form this far or this far out to the east, almost just offshore of Africa there, and it's basically a tropical wave that was moving off Africa that intensified a little bit, and now it is Tropical Depression 10. Potentially could become our next tropical storm, although it is looking very, very unlikely at this point. But still, this storm can reform as it heads over into the Caribbean, or whether it moves out to sea. We'll have to see about that, but it can still reform and then become our next named storm. And then we, of course, have Isaias over there in the northern Bahamas there. Now, here is currently where Tropical Depression 10 is, and it's currently at 18.2 degrees north by 21.7 degrees west, so it is very, very far to the east. We have maximum sustained winds, or an estimate of that, of about 25 knots, and a minimum central pressure of about 1,009 millibars there. So it's a fairly it's a very weak system that's moving off the Africa coast, and maybe as it moves further out to the west, it could re-intensify to some sort of decent tropical storm or system there. Now, here is your cone of uncertainty forecast from the National Hurricane Center. It's actually very hard to kind of see what they're actually forecasting, but it's right down here in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. They are bringing this to a tropical depression and keeping this to a tropical depression before it goes post-tropical within the next couple of hours. Now, here is your intensity guidance for the storm, and they are bringing this, one model bringing this to a tropical storm and even a Category 1 hurricane. Right now, we'll still have to see. Most of these models only go out about 24 to 48 hours here. Most of these main models, you only have a couple of models on this storm because it's so weak and so out to sea. But it does look like it does have the potential to strengthen. We'll have to see. We really have to wait until more of these models can go further out to really get a good understanding of what the storm could really bring. Now, here is current Isaias and over the Caribbean, and it's currently at 24.3 degrees north by 77.5 degrees west, maximum sustained winds of about 70 knots with gusts well up into the 80 to 85 knot region. And then we have a minimum central pressure of about 987, which I believe did actually go down from the last reading that they did. Now, Let's start looking at your key messages here, and I'm not going to read these out, but if you are interested, you can definitely pause the video right here and read them, or you can go to hurricanes.gov to go get that information straight from the National Hurricane Center's website. Now, here is the cone of uncertainty forecast from the National Hurricane Center. I'll be showing mine at the end of the video. They are bringing this to a hurricane until it hits about parallel to the northernmost point of Florida there, and then as it moves further north by Monday, it should be interacting with the Carolinas as a tropical storm, and then it should move between 8 a.m. Tuesday, and there's a real timing issue here where some of these models, for example, the European model, by 8 a.m. Tuesday has this storm right around the Carolinas, but by 8 a.m. Tuesday, for the GFS model, let's say, the GFS model actually has this all the way out into New England by 8 a.m. Tuesday. So that is a good about a few hundred miles between here and New England for such a big discrepancy in how fast this will track. The faster this tracks, most likely the more intense this will actually be because it'll have forward movement speed, and also it'll be able to move up the East Coast and impact. It'll have less impacts for parts of the northeast coast, mainly just because it'll be only for a shorter amount of time, especially if the GFS were to be correct. But if it were to be correct with the European, that would be actually more off the sea, mainly because it's giving way for a trough to kind of move the storm further to the east. So we have two different really solutions here that would really would indicate two different things. The slower the storm is, the more off the sea it is. The faster this is, the more direct impacts that you are going to see from the storm. Now, here is your current watches and warnings for this, for the Bahamas and also for Florida. Now, we have some hurricane warnings in effect for parts of eastern Florida as well as the northernmost Bahamas. We have tropical storm warnings in that blue region there for parts surrounding the hurricane warnings. And then we have some tropical storm watches in effect for parts of northern Florida and also southern and southeastern most Georgia. Now, here is your current history or your wind history for this storm, and we do have a very large area of tropical storm winds, and then we have another area there of some hurricane force wind speeds that were observed. Now, here is your probability of seeing tropical storm force wind speeds, and we do have onshore for areas just inland, you have about anywhere from about a 5 to about 40% chance of that occurring. Especially for eastern Florida, you have even a greater chance than that. You have about 60 to about 90% chance of that occurring. Now, as you get further to the north, and especially as you get into the interior southeast and parts of the mid Atlantic and the northeast, you have about a 5 to about 30% chance of that occurring, of tropical storm force wind speeds occurring. Now, here's your chances of seeing 58 mile per hour wind speeds, and for the easternmost Florida region, we do have a decent shot. Other than that, it is a slim chance for areas in the Carolinas and Virginia, according to the National Hurricane Center. Now, here is your hurricane force wind speed probability, and we have a very slim chance, about 5 to about 10 or 20% chance of that occurring for easternmost Florida. And then here's some of your model track guidance. These are your main models, and they're bringing this. Well, this is really the big question here, is whether this is going to actually track inland as it starts to move up the northeast coast, or whether this stays just offshore. Luckily, with this storm, most of the strongest winds are on the eastern side of the storm or on the right side of the storm, while the heaviest rain is on the left side or the western side of the storm. So this storm is going to be tracking up the east coast, and what you're going to get instead of the winds, which, for example, I'll draw the winds in right here. This would be, for example, where your winds would be, and your rainfall would be right around here, for example. On the western side, you're going to get all your rainfall, but you're really not going to get a lot of wind. You might get some gusts up into 20 or 30 miles per hour, but you're not going to see too much in terms of your wind gusts. What you're really going to see is that heavy rainfall. Now, if this tracks very far to the west and kind of rides up something like this, you'll actually end up getting the strongest winds for this region, and then the strongest rains west of the storm. So there's a lot of different possibilities with this right now. It's looking like it's not going to be a big wind machine for parts of the northeast and mid-Atlantic, but mainly it'll be a big rain maker. Now, Here is your model intensity guidance. Some models actually show this strengthening a little bit as it moves throughout the day today and into tomorrow, but most of these models have it staying steady until it hits about the 72-hour to 96-hour time frame, where it starts to really drastically dip down. Especially that's the time frame when it's starting to hit parts of the Carolinas, and that's when it's going to really interact with this next formidable landmass, and that's when it's going to really weaken as it moves over the Carolinas. Now, here is your storm surge map from the National Hurricane Center. They have 2 to 4 foot storm surge inundation for parts of the eastern Florida region, and some areas further to the south have about 1 to 3 feet storm surge risk. Now, here is your rainfall totals from the National or from the Weather Prediction Center, and this is just from Hurricane Isaias that's moving up the east coast right now. So this is just from this hurricane right here. You're also going to have another front that's moving eastward that should impact really these regions, so you will get even more rainfall before the storm. So you're going to definitely have some very wet soil, and that might actually cause some flash flooding. You see, we have about 4 to 6 inches from Pocket from Connecticut to about Maryland, and then another area for parts of the eastern South Carolina region, and just offshore of Florida and Georgia, you have about a 10 to 15 inch rainfall region, and luckily that looks to stay offshore for now. The rest of the East Coast, pretty much anywhere from eastern Maine to about southern Florida, you have about a 2 to 4 inch rainfall accumulation expectation for the storm. Now, let's start talking about my personal forecast. This is the 5-day cone outlook from myself here. And this is going from, again, today all the way until August 5th. And it is going to be basically making its way up the East Coast. And this really doesn't have too much room to differ. The models are getting pretty good on where this exactly is going to track. We have a fairly tight spread within the models, which is a good indication that they know generally what's going to happen. The real problem is with this intensity forecast right here. This is the hardest part to really forecast. Now, whether it hits Cape Hatteras really off further to the east, and it's really just a very small island, and it's not really a big landmass, that'll really help it strengthen and not weaken as much. But if it hits parts of the Carolinas, where it's actually instead of islands, it's actually a big landmass, and it starts to move a little bit further inland, that's when it's actually going to start to weaken a lot more. Right now, it's looking like it's going to be right around the eastern North Carolina region, where it's going to actually make landfall, and that would indicate that it would weaken from a Category 1 within the next 3 days to about a tropical storm, and then within the next 4 days, a tropical depression potentially. Right now, that latter part of this of right here. This is a little bit more undecided, but I will be making updates probably within the next couple of days. Again, no update tomorrow. I'm going to be making my fall foliage forecast, but potentially the day after that, I'll most likely make another update on this storm as it heads up the East Coast. So that is going to wrap it up for today's video. Please consider liking the video, subscribing, and turning on notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.